If you spend your whole life trying to change people around you, and it only left you exhausted, this idea will completely shift the way you think in this book, we are not talking about simple motivation. We're talking about a mindset shift that brings you back to yourself. A simple idea with a powerful impact. When you stop trying to control everything, your life starts to change on its own. This idea is called Let Them. Chapter 1. When you start living other people's lives, there is a quiet trap that most people fall into without realizing it. It doesn't happen suddenly. It happens slowly, one thought at a time, one reaction at a time, one overthinking moment at a time. At first, you simply care about people. You want to understand them. You want to maintain good relationships. You want things to go smoothly. That seems normal, but over time, something shifts. You stop just understanding people, and you start managing them. You begin thinking about what they will say before they even speak. You start adjusting your behavior based on how they might react. You replay conversations in your head, trying to fix how you came across. And without noticing, your life starts revolving around people who are not you. Pause. Think about that. Because this is where exhaustion begins. Not from physical work, but from emotional over-involvement in things you cannot control. You try to predict outcomes. You try to prevent misunderstandings. You try to control impressions. But the problem is simple. You're trying to control human reactions. And human reactions are not controllable. They shift. They change. They depend on mood, history, ego, perception, and timing. But your mind still tries. And that's where the stress builds. The invisible weight you carry. Most people don't realize this. A huge part of their mental exhaustion comes from people-pleasing behavior. Not always obvious people-pleasing. Sometimes it looks like over-explaining yourself, trying to prove your intentions, worrying about being misunderstood, needing everyone to see your side. But underneath all of that is the same pattern. You're trying to control how you are perceived. And that is a full-time emotional job. It never ends, because there will always be someone who misunderstands you. Always someone who disagrees. Always someone who judges differently than you expect. So if your peace depends on controlling that, your peace will never stay stable. The turning point begins quietly at some point. Something inside you starts to feel tired. Not just tired of people, tired of trying, tired of explaining, tired of fixing what was never broken in the first place. You start noticing a pattern. The more you try to control outcomes, the less control you actually feel inside yourself. It is ironic. The harder you push to manage everything outside, the more chaotic your inner world becomes. And then a quiet thought appears, almost unnoticed. What if I stop trying so hard? But even that question is not enough yet, because you still believe effort equals safety. You still believe controlling situations prevents pain. So you continue until one moment changes everything. The first time you say, let them, it does not feel powerful at first. It feels like giving up. Someone misunderstands you. Normally, you would explain, you would clarify, you would try to fix their perception. But this time, something different happens. You pause, and internally, you say, let them think what they want. Let them misunderstand. Let them draw their own conclusions. And then you do something unfamiliar. You stop. No extra explanation. No emotional chasing. No correction spiral. Just silence. And surprisingly, the world does not collapse. The situation does not get worse. In fact, something unexpected happens. You feel lighter, not because the problem is solved, but because you're no longer carrying it. What you don't realize yet at this stage, you don't fully understand what just happened. You think you simply avoided an argument, but something deeper changed. You broke a pattern of emotional over-responsibility. You stop believing that every misunderstanding needs correction. You stop believing that every opinion needs approval. You stop believing that your peace depends on other people getting you right. And that is the beginning of freedom. Not external freedom, internal freedom. The core shift, the truth, is simple, but powerful. You cannot control how people see you. You cannot control how they interpret your actions. You cannot control their emotions or reactions. But you can control one thing, whether you participate in that battle or not. And let them is the moment you stop participating. Closing of chapter 1, soft landing. And slowly, something changes in your life. Not overnight, but gradually. You stop chasing every misunderstanding. You stop fixing every impression. You stop reacting to every opinion. And for the first time, your life starts returning to you. Chapter 2. The moment you stop trying to control the clear, it comes a point in life when you don't even notice how much energy you're spending on other people. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally. You wake up thinking about what someone said yesterday. You go through your day replaying conversations. You analyze tones. You interpret silence. You search for hidden meanings in simple actions. And without realizing it, your mind becomes a full-time monitoring system for people's behavior. Pause. This is not peace. This is emotional exhaustion disguised as awareness. The illusion of control, most people believe something dangerous without even questioning it. If I understand people well enough, I can manage outcomes. So they try. They observe patterns. They adjust behavior. They overthink reactions. They prepare responses in advance. It feels like control, but it is not control. It is prediction anxiety. Because no matter how much you analyze people, they will still surprise you. Human behavior is not a formula. It is not a system. It is not predictable in a stable way. And yet your mind keeps trying. The emotional cost, you don't see the real problem, is not that you care about people. The problem is what that care turns into. It turns into emotional over-responsibility, constant self-questioning fear of being misunderstood, need for approval pressure to maintain perfect perception, and slowly, this becomes your normal state. You don't even notice how heavy it feels anymore because you adapted to the weight, but it's still there, always running in the background. The breaking point is quiet. There is no dramatic moment, no sudden collapse, just a quiet internal fatigue. You start feeling it in small situations. Someone doesn't reply fast enough. Someone misunderstands your intention. Someone reacts differently than expected. And instead of letting it go, you escalate it internally. You think more. You analyze more. You try to fix more. Until one day, something shifts. Not loudly, quietly. You stop mid-reaction, and a new response appears inside you. Let them. The first real use of let them, it is not powerful at first. It feels unfamiliar. Someone judges you unfairly. Normally, you would defend yourself, explain yourself, try to correct the misunderstanding. But this time you don't. You pause, and internally you say, let them. Let them think what they want. Let them misunderstand. Let them form their own version of you. And instead of reacting, you stay still. No explanation, no chasing, no emotional repair work. Just distance and silence. The unexpected result, your mind expects discomfort. It expects guilt. It expects regret. It expects unresolved tension. But something else happens. Relief. Not because the situation is solved, but because your energy is no longer trapped inside it. You realize something very important. Not every thought needs a response. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Not every opinion deserves your emotional energy. The real shift begins here. This is where the deeper transformation starts. You stop treating every situation as something you must fix. You start noticing patterns. The more you chase clarity, the less clarity you feel, the more you explain. The more misunderstood you become, the more you try to control perception. The more unstable it gets, and slowly, a new understanding forms. You were never actually in control. You were just emotionally involved. What let them actually does, it does not disconnect you from people. It disconnects you from the illusion of control. It gives you space to observe instead of react. It gives you clarity instead of confusion. It gives you distance instead of emotional entanglement. And most importantly, it gives you back your energy. Closing of chapter 2, and for the first time, you start noticing something different in your life. Not everything needs your response. Not everything needs your correction. Not everything needs your involvement. Some things you can simply let happen. Let them, and stay at peace anyway. Chapter 3. When you stop controlling, people show you who they really are, is something most people don't realize about relationships. They think they understand people clearly while they're trying hard to manage them. But the truth is different. You don't see people clearly when you're trying to control the situation. You only see a version shaped by your effort. Because when you're constantly adjusting, explaining, fixing, and responding, you are not observing reality. You are participating in distortion. Pause. Let that sink in. The hidden layer in every relationship, in most relationships, people are not showing you their full behavior. Not because they are hiding it intentionally, but because the dynamic itself is interfering. When you over-explain yourself, people don't fully process your boundaries. When you overgive, people don't feel the imbalance. When you overchase, people don't feel your absence. So everything becomes slightly blurred, not fully honest, not fully false, just unclear. And unclear relationships are the most exhausting ones. The moment you step back, now something important happens when you stop trying so hard. When you stop managing reactions, when you stop explaining every detail, when you stop chasing clarity, you create space. And space changes everything. Because now people are no longer reacting to your effort. They are reacting to reality. And reality is always more honest than effort. The first shock of truth at first, this feels uncomfortable. You notice changes. Someone who used to respond quickly slows down. Someone who used to show interest becomes distant. Someone who relied on your effort starts doing less. And your mind immediately wants to fix it. It says, what is happening? Did I do something wrong? How do I get things back to normal? But then the new thought appears. Let them. Let them act naturally. Let them respond how they actually feel. Let them show their real level of interest. And then you stop intervening. What starts to reveal itself, something very simple, happens next. Clarity. Not the kind of clarity you create. The kind of clarity that appears when interference disappears. You start noticing things you ignored before. Effort imbalance becomes visible, emotional investment becomes obvious, one-sided patterns become clear, genuine connection stands out instantly. It is not that people changed. It is that you stopped adjusting reality to make it comfortable. The emotional difficulty of truth, this stage, is not easy because truth can feel like loss at first. You may realize some people were not as invested as you thought. You may realize some relationships were maintained mostly by your effort. You may realize some connections only existed because you kept them alive. And the emotional reaction is natural. You want to go back. You want to fix it again. You want to restore the illusion. But this is where the shift deepens. Because now you understand something important. If something only survives because you are constantly forcing it, it was never stable to begin with. The power of non-interference, when you stop interfering with people's behavior, you stop shaping false connections. You allow real dynamics to surface. And real dynamics are not always comfortable, but they are honest. And honesty is the foundation of peace, even when it hurts. The change you don't expect, something unexpected starts happening over time. You stop feeling confused in relationships. You stop overthinking every message. You stop decoding every silence. You stop analyzing every shift in tone because you're no longer trying to maintain control. You are observing patterns instead, and patterns never lie. The core realization, you are not seeing people incorrectly before. You are seeing them through effort. And effort always distorts perception. Now, without effort, you see clearly, even if clarity is uncomfortable. Closing of chapter 3, and slowly, your relationships begin to reorganize themselves. Some people naturally move closer. Some people naturally move away. Some connections stabilize without effort. Some dissolve without conflict. And for the first time, you're not chasing any of it. You're simply allowing it. Let them, and watch what remains when nothing is forced. Chapter 4. When you stop seeking approval, you start finding, if there is a quiet way people lose themselves in life. It does not happen in one moment. It happens slowly through repetition, through small decisions that seem harmless at first. A little adjustment here, a small compromise there, a change in tone, a softened opinion, a silence instead of honesty. And over time, you start becoming a version of yourself that is shaped by other people's reactions. Pause, because most people don't realize this is happening while it happens. The hidden cost of approval at the beginning, seeking approval feels normal. You want to be accepted. You want to avoid conflict. You want to maintain relationships. You want people to like you. None of that feels wrong. But the problem starts when approval becomes a priority over authenticity. When you start thinking, what will they think if I say this? What if they misunderstand me? What if they don't like me anymore? Slowly, your decisions stop coming from you and start coming from fear of reaction. The version of you that gets created without noticing it. You start building a version of yourself designed to avoid rejection. You become more careful with words, more controlled in expression, more emotionally filtered, more reactive to perception, and on the surface, life looks normal. But internally, something is missing. You start feeling slightly disconnected from yourself. Not dramatically, just enough to notice something feels off. The turning point, the shift begins when you introduce a simple idea. Let them think what they want. Let them disagree. Let them misunderstand. Let them judge. And most importantly, let them not approve. Because approval was never guaranteed. It was always temporary, and it was always outside your control. The first time you choose yourself, there comes a moment where you normally would adjust yourself for comfort. You would soften your opinion. You would avoid honesty. You would shape your response to fit expectations. But this time you don't. You You speak honestly, or you stay silent without explaining. And internally, you say, let them. And something shifts because for the first time, you're not reacting to their expectations. You're acting from your own truth. The fear that appears this is where discomfort shows up because your mind is used to safety through approval. So it asks, what if they don't like me anymore? What if I lose them? What if I am misunderstood? But underneath those questions is a deeper fear. What if I am not accepted as I am? And this is where let them becomes powerful because it answers without argument. Let them not accept you and stay yourself anyway. The return to yourself, when you stop adjusting yourself for everyone else, something slowly comes back. Your clarity, your preferences, your honesty, your identity. You start noticing what you actually like, what you actually believe, what actually feels right for you. Not what is accepted, not what is expected, but what is true for you. And that is something you may not have felt in a long time. The peace that follows at first, life may feel quieter. Some people may not respond the same way. Some relationships may shift. Some approval may disappear, but something else replaces it. Stability inside yourself. Because now your peace is not built on external agreement. It is built on internal alignment. Closing of chapter 4, and slowly, you begin to understand something very important. You were never meant to be liked by everyone. You were meant to be yourself. And when you stop trying to control how others see you, you finally start seeing yourself clearly. Let them, and come back to who you really are. Chapter 5. The moment you stop controlling everything, you finally become FR. There comes a point in life where something inside you becomes tired in a different way. Not physical tiredness, not mental stress in the usual sense, but a deeper kind of exhaustion. The exhaustion of constantly trying to manage life, trying to predict it, trying to control it, trying to fix it, trying to shape it into something safe. And for a long time, you believe this is necessary. You believe control equals safety. But over time, you start to realize something uncomfortable. Control was never giving you peace. It was only giving you temporary relief. The weight you don't notice anymore when you live in a constant state of control, you stop noticing how heavy it feels. Because it becomes normal. You wake up already thinking. You go through the day analyzing. You end the day replaying everything. There is no real pause. Even in silence, your mind is working. But the strange part is, you think this is just how life is. Until one day, something changes. Not outside, inside. The moment of surrender. Not weakness, awareness. You don't collapse. You don't give up on life. You simply pause in the middle of your reaction. Someone behaves in a way you don't like. Normally, you would respond, explain, fix, control, correct. But this time you stop, and a different thought appears. Let them act how they want. Let them misunderstand. Let them leave. Let them choose differently. And then something unexpected happens. You don't feel weaker. You feel lighter. What you were actually fighting in that moment, you begin to see clearly. You were not really fighting people. You were fighting uncertainty. You were trying to remove discomfort by controlling outcomes. But life was never designed to be fully controlled. People were never meant to be predictable, and situations were never meant to be perfect. So every time you try to control reality, you were actually fighting reality itself. And that fight never ends well. The shift into freedom, when you stop participating in that fight, something changes immediately. Not everything around you changes, but your relationship with everything changes. You stop over-explaining, overthinking, over-responding, over-correcting, and you start doing something new, observing, allowing, accepting what is happening without trying to rewrite it. And this creates something you may not have experienced in a long time. Space. The power of emotional distance does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop attaching your peace to outcomes. You still feel, you still care, you still engage, but you are no longer emotionally trapped inside every situation. And that is a major shift, because now, someone's opinion does not define you, someone's reaction does not control you, someone's behavior does not destabilize you, you remain steady. Even when things are not. The life that starts to appear as you continue living this way, you begin to notice something surprising. Life does not fall apart. It organizes itself. People who are meant to stay. People who are not aligned drift away. Situations that are forced dissolve. Situations that are real strengthen naturally, without effort, without control, without emotional strain. The final realization, and eventually, you understand something deeply. Peace was never about controlling life. Peace was about releasing the need to control it. You were not meant to manage every reaction. You were not meant to fix every misunderstanding. You were not meant to hold every relationship together. You were meant to live. Simply, honestly, fully. The end of the struggle, and when you reach this point, something inside you settles. Not because everything is perfect, but because you're no longer resisting everything that is not. Final closing, let them be who they are. Let life unfold as it is, and let yourself finally be free.